Good evening, folks. From Assembly Hall for IU SportCon, Jimmy Cavanaugh joined by Sean Nash on my right, Brian Singer on my left, here to talk about an outstanding, really exciting game against Central Connecticut tonight for Indiana. Before anything else, guys, tough injury. Austin Etherington went down in pain, holding his knee at the very end of the first half. It didn't look like a good injury. It didn't look like a good situation.
Definitely not. They're thinking it's a left knee injury. No one's really going to extend. Crean said it's going to be a while before anyone knows anything. Very eerie scene here in Assembly Hall. 17,000 plus people just dead silent. Something I've never experienced before. And it was a very nice scene to see the entire IU bench, staff, players, and everybody run up to Etherington as he was being put on the stretcher to be taken off the floor.
And what the scariest thing was for me was when we saw that stretcher come out. We didn't know how bad it was at first. It looked bad, definitely. You see that stretcher come out, everyone goes quiet, and then the emotions, which what Crean talked about in the press conference after, of how close-knit of a group these guys are. So when one of the brothers goes down, the whole family gets impacted. What Tom Crean did give us, of course, not good news. He was sent right after the injury away. One can assume it was to the hospital, X-rays, MRI, whatever. It's gonna be interesting to see how the team rebounds from a loss like this.
And going forward, Austin Etherington didn't have a whole lot of meaningful playing time, but he was a contributor on this team. It's going to be tough on these guys moving forward without one of their brothers, as Tom Crean said. But overall, they played well tonight. It was a game that they won. They went undefeated without Hunter Mosquera-Perea and Peter Jerkin in the lineup. And guys, first let's talk about what we saw on the defensive side, because honestly, IU played some pretty solid defense early on. I mean, the final score may not indicate that, but they went in the middle of the first half on an 18-2 run. And just about all of that, according to Crean and the players, was keyed by their defense.
And the defense turns into offense. We heard Victor, we heard Watford say it, we heard Coach Crean say it. The 18-2 run kind of energized them. What I like to see out of Indiana, which we see a lot, is how they could play the press. They play the 2-3 zone. They play man-to-man. You could put Yogi on the ball, getting pressure. You know, you got Victor Oladipo, 20 deflections, first player ever for Tom Crean at least, to get back-to-back 20 deflections game. Jimmy, give it to us. Who was the last person? He got 23 deflections. Not back-to-back, but one game. Give it to us.
Dwayne Wade.
Dwayne Wade. So
he's pretty good.
If you're
Pretty
comparing
decent
Victor
player.
Oladipo to Dwayne Wade, you're doing something right if you're Victor Oladipo.
I mean, with this game, you got to kind of take the good with the bad. They shut down Cavanaugh, entered the game as the NCAA's leading scorer, only had 7 points tonight. But then you have Matt Hunter not scoring a lot of points coming into this game. 40 points. You never want anyone scoring 40 points on you.
13 for 25, I believe.
Yeah, 13 for 25 from the floor. So, obviously, it was great that they shut down Vanales, but then you can't leave someone else open to just take over a game like that. Luckily for IU, Central Connecticut State doesn't really have a lot of other weapons to go to keep this game close.
And here's a good number for you guys. Outside of Hunter, these guys shot 23% from the floor. It was a bad performance overall offensively. Hunter got hot and he did some good stuff. But I think Oladipo was right what he said after the game, that it's going to be about getting back in the lab, as he likes to put it, and making sure that they improve on defense. He says these guys have a long way to go on both sides of the floor. We saw some good things on defense. There's room to improve. Let's talk about the offensive performance we saw, because they scored 100 points, guys. It's free Doba for everyone. Free Doba. It's good news.
Not for us.
No, not for us. No, sorry. I'm sorry, actually, about that. There was a lot of good stuff to go around offensively. Why don't you start us off, Sean?
Obviously, Watford breaking out 21 points. He's kind of struggled so far this year. It was nice to finally see him come out and play. Zeller, 6-inch advantage over everyone on Central Connecticut's roster. Not surprisingly, drops 19 points, a lot of them down low. And Oladipo, some absolute highlight dunks that we're going to be seeing on ESPN for the SportsCenter Top 10. One over a player, I believe it was Terrell Allen, posterized him on that one, and then he had a nice reverse 180 dunk that he did behind the back there.
If you look at the photo negative, I think Oladipo destroyed his soul on that dunk.
He might have.
I think we were talking to Tony Adrani, another IUSC contributor, editor, actually. We're going to give him a proper title. And Vanales is apparently on the sideline just going, doing the dunk face. It was something that was absolutely filthy, but Oladipo and Zeller weren't the only guys. There's a whole lot of positive stuff going around.
Oh, without a doubt. Sean talks about Christian Wofford went 8 for 12 today. We saw him go 36% from the field before this game. So for him to go 8 to 12 is something great for him, something great for the team. But what I point out is the greatest asset for Indiana's team, which we saw today, which ESPN pointed out is the greatest flaw, if you could find a flaw on this Indiana's team, is the bench. We saw the bench today come out 27 points, almost a quarter, over a quarter, over 25% of the total team points.
Yes.
I need to calculate it there. Shows you how I'm going to do on my final in a week or so.
Oh, let's not talk about that.
But anyway, we saw Remy, we saw Mo Creek, we saw those guys. We saw Hollowell put up, I believe, 6 points it was this game. So we see those guys contributing, taking the pressure off the starters, but it also lets Crean play how he wants to play with the fast break. You see the guys running up and down the court, offense and defense. You can only play that way if you have the depth. The depth that puts up 25% of your points, that's the greatest asset to me.
And you don't need every guy to step up and have a great game. Will Sheehy wasn't his normal, incredibly efficient self. I mean, he only shot 50% from the floor. And Remy Abel missed his threes. He's been shooting literally 80% from out there. Jordan Hulls didn't have a great game, but they still scored 100 points. If we're looking at this team as an offensive unit, they're the number one offense in the country by efficiency. They're one of the top defenses. And as we mentioned a little earlier, they're getting back Hunter Mosquera-Perea and Peter Jerkin from a couple suspensions. What new can they bring to the team?
Well, Perea and Jerkin, especially with Etherington's injury, I mean, you hope he's back as soon as possible. Who knows how soon that'll be? But it's kind of like Elston went down, Etherington went down. Now it's their turn to step up. When I asked Coach Crean after this game of what role we can see, he said it's still early to tell. I expect maybe 12, 15 minutes maybe around for the first game against a talented Butler team, which puts up around, I believe, 73 points per game, a number that's good enough for 88th in the nation. They're going to have to come in and provide the depth if Indiana wants to continue playing as quick as Coach Crean wants them to play.
And even though you talked about needing some more to bring to the table, maybe it being a slower process, Shawnee also said, Cody Zeller said, there is stuff that they bring to the table that they don't have yet.
The arms.
Yes, Zeller complained about having to go up against these two in practice every day. Hopefully it translates to more big man play down low for IU, maybe giving Zeller a little bit of a break, Jerkin the 7-footer, maybe even taller than Zeller. And it's nice to have another option, 7-footer out there for the Hoosiers.
And I want to see some more highlight reel dunks, too. I'm really excited to see Air Columbia, Hunter Mosquera-Perea, making his initial flights in Assembly Hall. I'm looking forward to that without question. And let's talk a little bit more about the Butler game, Sean. Looking forward. You're pretty familiar with Butler.
A little bit.
You're aware of Butler's basketball team in general. We're going to see them play in Bankers Life Fieldhouse. It's already sold out. Tickets are prohibitively expensive. What are we looking for in terms of matchup next week?
Well, for IU, the key is obviously playing perimeter defense. You got Rodney Clark, the transfer from Arkansas, lights-out shooter for Butler. You also have the freshman Kellen Dunham, great shooter. If IU cannot, keep these guys from getting these open shots, Butler, we've seen what they can do against North Carolina, where they can absolutely come out and blow out a team that should be more talented than them. Do I think they're going to blow out IU? Definitely not. But they can keep up. If they can keep this game close, they can hit enough big game shots. We've seen Clark already hit a game winner against Marquette in the Maui Invitational. They can pull this upset off.
And Rodney Clark we talk about, I believe he averages right under 18 points per game. He is their team leading scorer. Where Yogi's going to be guarding him. He comes in at 6 foot. He's a sophomore, Clark. You're going to see a sophomore against a freshman, some inexperience in a big atmosphere. You talk about, tickets are going for skyrocket. You're going to have a atmosphere which is just as enthusiastic, I guess, as Assembly Hall. More enthusiastic.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
You don't think not as enthusiastic?
I like the Assembly Hall atmosphere.
No. And that's
comparatively
great.
Speaking.
Yeah, of course. Yogi obviously has had experience in playing in an atmosphere of the largest student section in the nation. Unfortunately, Clark has not. But it's going to be an interesting matchup to see two quick point guards, both at 6 foot. Is Yogi? Is he up there?
Yogi's not 6 foot.
They might put him in at 6 foot.
He's listed at 6 foot. He is not 6 feet tall. If you take one thing away, Yogi Ferrell is not 6 feet tall.
but it's going to be the point guard play of each team, defensively and offensively, because Clark is the lone, I'd say, and Sean, you know this, the lone facilitator of the offense. If Butler doesn't have Clark going, if Brad Stevens doesn't get Rodney Clark going in the game, Butler's going to have a hard time defeating Indiana. And they do already now, but without Clark, it's nearly impossible.
And that's where their inconsistency has come so far this year, is Clark is transitioning. He was a shooting guard at Arkansas. He's having to transition to become the point guard. He's not used to handling the ball, and we've seen it in some possessions where he, runs into a situation too fast. But if you do not come up and guard him once he crosses that half-court line, he can step up and pull at any time, and he can make that with great proficiency.
And one way or another, it's going to be a fascinating matchup to watch. IU has silenced a lot of doubters so far this year. Again, undefeated without a couple of their big freshmen. Derek Elston on his way back. Austin Etherington out of the rotation. But for the most part, the future is looking bright for these guys heading into Christmas break. That's about all the time we have here, guys. Any final thoughts before we go?
Great performance going into finals. Now they get to study, with ease, with maybe a little pressure off their back. They're going into December 15th, the big return of the freshmen undefeated. You can't get much better than that.
Another nice week of full preparation. They're going to need it for Butler. This, I think, will end up being their biggest game non-conference-wise after we've seen North Carolina kind of falter a little bit, maybe not be as good as experts thought from the beginning of the season.
Remember, Butler beat North Carolina.
Definitely, yeah. And that game was not as close as the final score indicated.
At all. Butler was up big.
Butler had a 20-plus point lead throughout the game. North Carolina made a run at the end of the game. Like I said, Butler able to do that. They'll be able to hang with IU and make this a very, very exciting game. One of the best games, I think, coming up for the non-conference.
Yep, it should be a fun one to watch. Again, for Brian Singer and Sean Nash, I'm Jimmy Cavanaugh. Good night. Travel well, folks. Thanks for watching. We will catch you next time from Indianapolis. So long.